Okay, welcome to math. I just want to give you a quick heads up. Get your green notes packets out, calculator, and have a pencil. Have your assignment 97% of application worksheet, application and percent worksheet out. Be working on your IXL as well. And just a reminder, your Unit 6 test is this Friday, and I will be holding, this is Mr. Baker, holding a review session that any student's welcome to attend on Friday morning. Just meet at door 1, just outside the front office at 8:30, and we will be reviewing for the test that day. All right, so this is your homework assignment from yesterday, and this is a good review of everything that will be, quite honestly, just about everything on the test. And so as you go through, you can pause and take a look. I'm going to highlight a few things, not talk through everything, but remember, it's important to kind of use this table to your advantage. If you use the 20%, you've got to be careful because you'll have these 17 cents where you need to actually subtract that to get to the 68 cents. And so you'll notice that's what I did on these questions. Many of you use the 80%. So if it's 20% off, you're paying 80%. Same thing on number 2. Instead of 25% off, they thought of it as 75% that you pay to go directly to the sale price. You'll see that my work, if you wrote down $10, you were halfway there. But always go back and look at the question. It wouldn't make sense, for example, on number 2, if the original price was $40 and they're only 25% off, and then they're going to charge you they want the sale price and they'd only charge you $10. It wouldn't make sense. The next 2 questions were markups, and so what you need to remember is you're increasing the prices. So you're going up, and so when you're increasing, you're adding. And so you can either add the percents to get 140, which would take you directly to the 42, or you can see in my work where we get 12, which is the amount of the markup, and you add that to the original to get to the total selling price. Same thing on number 4 was a 200% increase to get to the $142.50. And notice you do have to have that extra 0, even though your calculator will drop it because it's not thinking it's money. As you look at number 5, you're looking for discount rate. Today we're going to talk about interest rate. When you hear the word rate, tax rate, what they're referring to is a percent. And so in this case, if you accidentally used 48, so the most common mistake that students make is they use 48 up on top instead of the 24. If you use 28 or 48, you end up with 66.6 repeating percent. Well, that would be the percent you're paying. And you could work backwards if you recognize by subtracting those 2% to get to the 33.3 repeating percent. So as you're looking for a percent of markup or percent of discount, remember, you should be figuring out the amount of the discount. This is a percent of change question. And so that top number is the amount of markup on number 6. That's the amount off on number 5. And so you can, once again, can pause, take a closer look at each one of these. On number 7 and 8, you're looking for the original price, and the only way to go from the sale price back to the original is to look at it not as a percent off, not as 15% off, but what percent are you paying? So 85%, and you're missing the original, which is W, that goes on the bottom. Same thing on number 8. Once again, instead of thinking of it as 25% off, think about it as paying 75%. The $42 is 75% of what the original was, and so that's the only way you can work back and get to that $56. As you look at the back, you can use the shortcut for tax now that you understand that. And so you'll look at my work. I did not use the shortcut. I found the amount of tax, then I added it. You could have done 106% to go directly there. I found the amount of tax, which is $5.70 on number 10, but you could have used 108.5% to go directly to $72.70. This question said, what would the tip be? So this time you have to use just the 20%, and I want the $3.24. If you accidentally added it to find the total with tip, you are correct, but incorrect based off of that. The number 12, I forgot to tell my original classes to cross off the delivery fee. So your answers are going to be off on this. You can kind of ignore. I meant to have you scratch off the delivery fee. Yours would have been 25%, so that would have been 125%. So your answer would have been slightly larger for that one because you're paying a delivery fee on top of it. Commission, remember I crossed these boxes off at the bottom because you don't have to add. You're not adding. You only get to keep $127.50. This one had a salary, so the salary is guaranteed. It's $800, and then the commission was $49, so you have a total of $849, excuse me. And this one was the price with tax, and the only way to go backwards from the price with tax to the original is to think about what was that percent that you're paying, including tax, which was 108%, and then you had to use 107% on number 16 as well. All right, turn to page 11 in your notes packet. We are going to begin lesson 6.6, which is on simple interest. Have a calculator ready, and here we go. We're only going to do 3 examples today, and then we'll do a couple questions. Some key words you need to understand. Interest. Interest is the money paid or earned for lending money. So it's kind of like rent. When you go to rent an apartment or a home, you are paying somebody to use that. If you borrow money from the bank, you are going to pay rent, and that is called interest. You're paying extra money back to the bank for letting you use their money, and vice versa. You can have that. It can be a positive thing as well. The principal is a fancy word for the original amount that you either borrowed or deposited. Interest is the money paid or earned only on the principal. Now, we're going to use something called simple interest, and this is this formula. And so we're going to I'm going to blow it up a little bit larger so you guys can see, but there's a couple things that we want to stress, all right? So the I on your paper, you can see your I stands for the interest. And so this is your interest. Interest is the money created. So when you're solving this formula, you are going to be finding interest, okay? The P stands for principal, which is the starting amount, okay? So this might be what you borrowed, or it could be what you invested in something, okay? The interest rate, this is the most important one to pay attention to because it must be, and I don't know why it's getting so messy on my handwriting here. Hopefully that's not going to be the case on everything. So it has to be in decimal form. You have to have it in decimal form in order to be successful with this. So remember to change a percent to a decimal, okay? Percent to a decimal, you're going to move that decimal point 2 to the right. And then T, the other thing, has to be in years, okay? Now, when you're finding that, when you're finding interest, interest is the rent you're paying, and if I want the balance, meaning the grand total, you have to pay back your balance, your principal, and you're going to add to it the interest. And so as we get into some things in a moment, it'll hopefully make sense. But if I ask you for the balance, then you're going to take your principal, which is what you either borrowed or invested. And if I invested, that's money I want back, plus I want the interest. If I borrowed from the bank, so if I borrowed $200,000 for a house, they're going to want their $200,000 back plus the interest. And that's what the balance is when you add them together. All right, so let's take a look at this first example. And the easy thing is we're not going to do a proportion. So on all of these questions, we're going to write I equals PRT. And I like to leave myself some space in between because sometimes these numbers are big. And it says you deposit $500 in your savings account. It earns 3% in simple interest per year. What is the balance at the end of 3 years? Okay, so now this first number, the $500, is our principal. That's what we borrowed. Okay, or we put into our savings account. So in this case, it's a benefit. The R, once again, stands for our rate. It's a percent. But we have to take this 3% and we need to change it to its decimal form, and that means it's actually 300ths. So we're going to go ahead and put it. Now, if you get an answer that seems extremely large, it's probably because you did not change it to its decimal form. And then 3 years will go underneath time. You're going to write something underneath each letter and line it up and make sure it matches up with what the meaning is. You're going to take your calculator and you're going to multiply those. You will get $45. Now, it asked you for the balance. Now, balance is the total. I would be pretty disappointed if I put $500 in the bank and all they gave me back was $45. This is my interest. So the balance is my principal, which was $500, plus the $45 interest. So the balance is $545. It's $545. And so that's what my answer would be on this case. All right. The next question, all right, and this is an example of it worked out nice and pretty for you from the textbook. All right, the next question, once again, we're going to set up our formula. And, whoops, I can't set up my formula correctly. I equals P R T. Try to give yourself a bunch of room. And it says you deposit $1,000 into your account. The account earns $100 in interest in 4 years. And it says, what is the annual interest rate? So this time, it's once again, we're trying to get you guys thinking a little bit, not always having the same thing missing. So the deposit means you put money in, and that deposit would be your principal. The $100 in interest would be interest, which is your I, and years obviously would be a period of time, and we always need it in years. And so we deposited in $1,000, so the $1,000 goes underneath P. My interest is my I, so underneath I, I'm going to put $100, okay? Underneath the 4 years is time, so I'm going to put 4 here. And obviously then we're missing our R, which is our rate. We're missing our percent. When you hear the word rate, you're thinking percent. So now we're going to go ahead and we have to solve equations like we did first semester. We'd multiply the 4 and the 1,000, gives me 4,000 R. We're going to divide by 4,000. And when we divide by 4,000, you're going to have R isolated. And you're going to get this. Now, it's not going to make sense to you because you're thinking, oh, well, that R is the percent. But remember, in this formula, we use the decimal form of the percent. So what we have to do is we need to change this decimal back into its percent form. So we're going to move that decimal point over 2. So R is really 2.5%. So our interest rate was 2.5% for that 4 years. Okay. As we look at the final question, and so there's that worked out from the textbook. This final question is making you, goes a little bit into kind of an interesting little setup on the right. But once again, we're going to use I equals PRT. And it says the bank offers 3 savings accounts. A simple interest rate is determined by its principal. How long does it take an account with a principal of $800 to earn $100? And so once again, how long? Well, that would mean time. We're missing time this time. And the principal, it just literally told us the principal is $800, so we can put that in here. Tells us our interest is $100. So obviously we're missing 2 pieces of information. So now we need to look down here in these boxes. And so this is what they're offering at the bank. And so what they're saying is if you put more money in the bank, I'm going to give you a better interest rate. So we put in $800, so that doesn't fit into that box. We did not put in more than $5,000. We put in between $500 and $5,000, so we get a 2% interest rate. So 2%, once again, we need to change into its decimal form, would be 0.02. And so we're going to put that underneath my rate, and that's the rate we earned, and we're missing time this time. So now we multiply, and we get 16t, and we're going to divide by 16, and we will get a period of time of 6.25, and that would be years, and hopefully you recognize 0.25 would be 1/4 of a year. Now your only homework is going to be to turn your paper over, so there once again is the work out from the textbook, is to flip over to page 12, and we're going to do a couple questions from each, and you guys are going to finish this worksheet as your homework. So as we look, I'm going to do one of these questions with you. Let's look at number 2. All right, and this is a 2-part question. So we're going to do A, and then down here we're going to do B on each one of these. So we have to read. And so it says an account earns simple interest. A, find the interest, and then B, find the balance. So we're going to start with I equals PRT, and the principal this time is our, and it told us to find the interest, so we already know we're missing I, but $5,000 would be our principal. 4.5 is our rate, which is, we need to move that decimal point over 2, so that 4.5% is really 0.045, And now this is where we have to be careful. If you put in 6 months as T, you will have an incorrect answer because you would be typing in 6 years is what the formula would think you're doing 6 years. Time always has to be in years. And so what you need to recognize that in a year there are 12 months. So it's really 6 divided by 12 to figure out how many years. And if you divide that, you're going to get 0.5, which is half of a year. So it's 0.5. And now we get to go ahead and use our calculator and multiply. So we're going to go ahead and do 5,000 times 0.045, which is 4.5%, times 0.5, which would be half of a year. And so the interest that you'd get paid for half of a year, and you're going to get 0.5 on your calculator, but it's money, so we need to put a dollar sign behind it. So $112.50. Part B now says find the balance. Well, the balance is equal to the principal plus your interest. Well, our original investment was $5,000, and then our interest was $112.50. And so our balance would then be $5,112.50. So there are our 2 answers. Your job is to finish those 2 questions next to it. As you look at these, I'm going to help you set up, but I am not going to do. I want to stress with you, hint, hint. Once again, it needs to be in years. Go back and look, how did we deal with that months a moment ago? But notice what we're looking for is find the annual interest rate. Rate means percent. So this time we're missing the R. And so as we look, we have I equals P RT. And notice we have an R, an I. We have our P, which is 150, and we have our T, which is time. And so you're going to have to go ahead and work backwards to solve it as we did before. The last 3 questions, you are working backwards to find the amount of time. So once again, you're going to use your formula, I equals P RT, and we have I this time, which is our interest. We have our principal, and we have our rate, which remember, we need to change to its decimal form. And that's going to give us this, and then we're going to have our time. And now you're going to work backwards from that to calculate that. So your only homework is to finish up this worksheet, this reteaching worksheet, and then take a picture of it and submit it to assignment 98. And then I would recommend that you begin working on your IXL. You now can do that simple interest IXL, and have a wonderful day.